Brown. Okay, UPAR is an organization devoted to performance artists, and tonight we're going to welcome an exciting performance artist. But first, I want to thank the Brothers Mead for hosting us tonight. That is fantastic that they're doing this. And I also want to thank the famous Mark Gunderson for his atmospheric tea music. And I want to thank Sean Schultz, the master of all teas. Be sure to tip him as well, please. He'll be serving tea during the whole performance and after as well, so try some new exotic teas. I also want to thank Rob Ebright, the videographer, and videography by Fred Scrouton. Thank you very much. And without further ado, I am proud to announce the one, the two, the only, Goblinhood and his female companion, Chimera.
And now, by order of the Martian Provisional Government,
it's Goblinhood time again, co-starring my sidekick, the amazing suitcase doll.
Yay!
And guest starring our colleague, the Cosmic Weeble doll. And we have some other important guest stars here tonight, such as my performance predecessor, Buckethead, seen here in the form of the head of Buckethead sitting on that little chair over there. And we also have my partner, Chimera. But before you get to meet Chim, I'd like to tell you a few things about Chimera. Chim, unlike me, I'm an artificial life form. Chim's more of a virtual being. And I was one of her creators. And she never actually expected to be here tonight performing. She had no idea how that could work out. So our creator, Beoddy, the artist, gave her, as a birthday present, when she was 1 year old, his left hand to draw with. He's right-handed and doesn't use his left hand for anything. So he told Chim, you go ahead and teach yourself to draw with my left hand. And she said, okay, you know. And these pictures here are drawn by Chimera. Beoddy went over them for 3D and did the actual painting, but the drawings are hers. Now that far one is called Pukamami. It's based on a word that means a fake tattoo, so that's like a fake tattoo on Chim's arm, if I'm not telling tales out of school. The other one actually figures in our performance tonight. It was done for this. It's called The Hand of Chum. Chum is Chimera's demonic counterpart, sort of demonic, quasi-demonic. And he had a hand in her creation, basically by goading us, telling me and Beoddy, oh, you could never do that in a million years. You can't create another character. And we said, oh yeah, well, we'll see about that. And now, we've all seen about that. But anyway, that's Chum there. He's a shape-changing demon. He can take any form he wants. Tonight he happens to be appearing here in the form of that painting. There are some 3D glasses around that you can use to look at the paintings. If you do, look at the paintings with the red lens over your bright eye. The other thing Chim did was, I don't know, most of you who know me know that I'm supposed to be a volunteer shaman, and I've been doing all this shamanic stuff for 2012. The big year, it's finally here. In fact, it's almost over. So as the year wore on, became more and more important to get all this stuff done. And I had a little comic book called Goblinhood 2012, and it was about 2012. I did it back in 2008, and that was all we had to say. Well, Chimera came along since then, and she had a lot more to say. She's added 2 volumes to that, so now we have a whole trilogy. I'm going to show you the comic book. So much for that. Actually, I'm going to show you the whole trilogy. We're not trying to sell these. They're all online. And if you want to know where to look at them, we have some old flyers from Compass that have the relevant websites on them. So they'll tell you where to look the comic book up. We may be talking about things tonight that you won't understand if you haven't read this stuff, or that you will understand better once you do read it. There's Goblinhood 2012, Chim Storm from earlier this year, and the latest and greatest, the big climax to the trilogy, Chim's Pukarama comics. We'll be hearing more about the character named Pookie as we go along, but what I wanted to say was that the whole point of the Hand of Chum there, Chimera believes that yes, Chum had a hand in creating her, but she thinks Pookie, this omnipresent character trying to save the world, had a hand in that. So whatever Chum thinks he's doing what Pookie wants, just like everything else, I guess. Pookie's that omnipresent. Anyway, we're going to be doing some poetry, but without further ado, I would like to introduce to you the one that I believe is the star of our show tonight, Chimera.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Hi. Happy 2012. And thanks for the introduction, Gabi. That was really nice. You know, people, one difference between an artificial life form and a virtual being is that I'm more sensitive to inanimate objects. So, for instance, it never occurred to Goblinhood to even let these dolls say hello to you. But we're going to do that tonight for the very first time. This will be the first time the dolls have ever spoken. And we're not even sure what kind of voices they'll use. But we're about to find out, starting with Suitcase. Suitcase, is there anything you'd like to say? Why, yes, Jim. I'd like to say, hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to finally get to talk. And I bet the Cosmic Weevil doll concurs. What about it, Cosmic Weevil doll?
Yes, I concur.
I hope that these voices will work out in the future, too.
Well, that's great, guys. You did just fine. And we'll hear more from you some other time. Because we're also going to be hearing from the head of Buckethead, right there. He hasn't said anything since, gee, I don't know, what was it, 1996, when he became just a head. But let's see what he has to say now.
Well, hello, Jim. It's great to finally get to speak again. I don't have much to say, but hello, people, and thank you for having us here tonight.
That's great, Bucky. You're from some obsolete old millennium that nobody ever thinks about. So it's a nice thing that you can be here to talk to us tonight.
Yes, well, you know, this whole planet is left over from some obsolete millennium that nobody ever talks about or thinks about. So we're all in good company.
Well, that's just great. But how come you have such a gravelly voice?
Well, I guess it's surprising that I could be able to talk at all, since I'm only a head and I don't have any vocal cords.
Yeah, well, that's really surprising there, Bucky. Thanks for your input. And I guess, to be absolutely fair, we should also hear from Chum. I know it's no fun, but let's see what the quasi-demonic character has to say for himself. Chum, if you've got anything to say, that's Chum right there, by the way. Go ahead and say it. Yes, that's real fair of you, Chimera. But don't do me any favors. I notice you forgot to tell your precious audience why it is that nobody's lips move when we're supposed to be talking, and why all the voices you're using sound like they're coming from the back of your head. You know what, Chum? Shut up. But to answer your first question, nobody's lips are moving because we're all expert ventriloquists and our lips aren't supposed to move. Is that right, everybody? Yeah. And for your information, Chum, the voices aren't coming from the back of my head. They're coming from the speakers. That's the whole point of a sound set. And now I get to do some poetry. This is an old piece. This is also left over from an ancient millennium. In fact, it was originally done in 1991. It was published in a little book called Hall of Shame. Nobody's heard it since. But we're going to do it for you tonight. And I'm reciting this whether my lips move or not. Please pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. This is called The Queen of Dreamland's Slumber. The Queen of Dreamland's slumber is like the sound you hear when silent cyclones rampage through your house, vaporizing all but the china. The Queen of Dreamland's slumber is like the way the moon looks on the nights when thick clouds cover everything, or when there is no moon. The Queen of Dreamland's slumber is like soft breezes blowing through trees while you work underground on your home fallout shelter. It feels like an orgasm in a nocturnal emission where you didn't get to come. The Queen of Dreamland's slumber tastes just like the birthday cake that you dropped face down in a fresh pile of dog shit and then puked all over to boot. The Queen of Dreamland's slumber can only manage to smell like orchids and garlic with a hint of asafoetida frozen 20 feet under the permafrost in the bleak, frigid heart of Antarctica. The Queen of Dreamland's slumber is what keeps the trains running on time and what keeps the grains rolling in on time in the city of bread and circuses. It keeps the sun shining, the bombs bursting, the children crying, the victims dying, the clouds sighing, the minds bleeding. All this and more as a mere side effect to the snoring slumber itself. The Queen of Dreamland's slumber is when nothing seems to matter. All thoughts seem to scatter. Your brain starts to shatter. Your mind tends to splatter. Your head gets served on a platter, and you notice your nose is running. It's when you don't remember why you came here. It's when you can't quite figure what you're doing here. At the geographical, mathematical, and metaphysical center of the existential center of everything. The queen of dreamland slumber is who shot down the Kennedys and others, and who got to watch it on TV. It's who needs to know and who doesn't have to be told. It's who starves and who gets eaten. It's who lets sleeping dogs lie and who kicks the froth out of dogs for no reason. It's who you know and who you blow. It's whose faces were last seen stumbling into gas chambers and whose fingers ticked off the names on nameless lists of names. It's who's who on a wholesale basis. The queen of dreamland slumber is where you go when you have to go there, and they have to take you in. But it's also where they don't have to like you, even if you've been taken in. It's where the heart is, on the nights when there is a heart. And it's also where you left your heart, when you got tired of having a heart. It's where, if you hang around long enough, sooner or later, everyone in the world will walk by, but you won't see anyone you know. It's where you don't need a ticket to get in, and they don't sell tickets to get out, but they hand out tickets for loitering. The queen of dreamland slumber is why we made it to the moon on a night when there was a moon, and it's why some of us keep going to the moon, even if we have to wear rubbers. It's why things come out smelling like a rose, while we seek a cure for the common rose. It's why the sky blisters over cities in Japan, but it's also why these days the sky only blisters underground, or if we have a meltdown in our pants. It's why cold fusion doesn't work until everyone really wants it to work, and then it might work. It's why we burn the midnight oil, and why we fight wars all night over oil, so we can keep oiling the machine. It's why the machines are taking over, and why they'll find that they made a bad bargain while they were driving a hard bargain. It's why we beam messages out into space to see if anyone's out there. And it's why they only beam messages back that say, sorry, no, we're not out here. It's why we study the human mind to see if anyone's in there. And it's why we only get back messages that say, no one's in here either. But it's why we keep looking anyway, till it's time to watch the news on TV. The queen of dreamland slumber is that which the air thinks when we air our views, is that which the water thinks when our eyes start watering, is that which the fire thinks when we get all fired up, is that which the earth thinks when we wipe our asses with the whole earth catalog. It's the four forces, the four horses, the missing fifth force, and the lost Watergate tapes on which the missing fifth Beatle was said to have played. It's the lost city of El Dorado, on the lost continent of Atlantis, in the lost region of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the wars we thought. It's the wars we lost but thought we won, and the ones we could have won against the human condition, have we not lost the nerve to fight them? It's the lost cause of the human race, and the $10 I lost 10 years ago on my way to the store for cigarettes. It's the great lost and found in the sky, which is only open every other day, but never open today. It's the sleep lost by the Crimson King. when he thinks he's dreaming about being awake, for the want of which the kingdom was lost. The Queen of Dreamland's Slumber is the best-selling novel which nobody reads, but which everybody buys. It's the best bet for a good time when you call this number, and the best time you can have on such short notice and under such reduced circumstances, and when you're having such a lousy, rotten time. It's the best of times and the worst case scenario. It's not the best of all possible worlds, but it's probably the best we can do. It's been called the only game in town, but that probably isn't true. It's the spider web in which you caught me and I caught you. It's painful and cruel, and it's horrid too. It's enough to make you feel sad and blue, like life in an underfunded zoo, or pursuing a murderer without a clue. But if you think this is bad enough to give you the shakes, a nightmarish hell with no lucky breaks, it will get even worse if we raise the stakes and go for broke with whatever it takes until the very universe quakes and shatters from the awful sound it makes when the Queen of Dreamland finally wakes. And now it's back over to Goblinhood.
And thank you, Chimera. That was fun. Sure. I hope everybody else had as much fun as she did. You know, in that Pukarama comic, if you get to read it online, there's a discussion of poetry and how we write it. And we don't write it very much. We don't write very much poetry. I'm sure some people would think we don't write any poetry, but I can actually tell you the genesis of this next poem, which I haven't done for at least 10 years, but it's one of my favorites. However, it's not a very nice poem.
Oh
no. In fact, it's about the skankiest thing I ever wrote. But it meant well, or it meant something. And the genesis of it was that it was back during the first Gulf War. Does anybody remember that? When we invaded Iraq for the first time, and the bombs were bursting in air, and it was really exciting. It was all just like the 4th of July. The news was really excited about it, and I think Beoddy was trying to get a weather report or something, and he had the news on. And their latest bit of stuff was about how they had to use bulldozers to push the dead Iraqis out of the roads so they could drive back and forth in their little jeeps and things. And at that point, and I think he actually left it off this time for, I don't know, a long time. And beyond that, he felt like he needed a bath. So he goes and runs his bath, and he gets into the bathtub, and this poem marches right into his head. It's almost all there, you know? So he had to get out of the bathtub, dripping wet, go get something to write it down, and write it down. So, whatever it sounds like it's talking about the joys of the first Gulf War. But it's kind of a Southern Gothic poem. And it's entitled
rabbit tobacco. In the South, they grow rabbit tobacco, though you won't have heard too much about it. It's not really something they're proud of. It's just a useless weed after all. But remember when we were all children? We sometimes made fake Christmas trees in grade school out of rolled up newspapers that we painted green and shredded like a tall, scrawny, spindly weeping willow. But just paint it gray and even thinner, and it looks just like rabbit tobacco, which tastes a lot like gray newsprint as well. And meanwhile, those swell newsprint trees worked exactly like rabbit tobacco for the children who didn't have any real trees to play with. In the South, they sometimes start smoking real early. They grow real tobacco down there, after all, and they smoke it for many different reasons, I guess. But I guess many think it's a way to grow up. And most everyone really just wants to grow up. And the kids who can't get the real thing fill their pipes up with rabbit tobacco. It doesn't get them off or anything. It just tastes like burning gray newsprint. But it lets them pretend to really be smoking. It lets them pretend to grow up. It also just gives them a little something to do. It's best smoked through a toy plastic bubble pipe with a corncob bowl attached. Yes, the South grows a lot of strange flora and fauna, but I've mostly lived in the North. And though I grew up on a farm in Ohio, I never saw rabbit tobacco grow there, and now I reside in the city, where nothing much seems to get to grow. But I walk in the park on occasion, and I watch the children playing their games, and they all still smoke rabbit tobacco in the forest of the park and the forest of the mind. But I pretend I don't see what they're doing as I hide in the rabbit tobacco thickets. We're all still just trying to grow up, after all, in the park or the mind or wherever. And sometimes I go to the movies, away from the cares of my day, and I watch the dream people move through the bright daydreams with their pipes filled with rabbit tobacco. And the audience cries out with pleasure, but coughs at the brittle gray taste in their mouths. But while sitting at home, in front of the box, they drool, and they moan, and they come in their pants, as if they were screwing a dog and pretending it was rabbit tobacco. But life isn't only such pleasant pursuits and escapes here in the big city. We also have serious responsibilities and serious obligations as citizens of a free nation which expects us to govern ourselves and to make our own trees and to fill our own pipes. And so we go off to the polls when we must, and we vote the rabbit tobacco ticket, no matter which party we think we're voting for. And it really doesn't matter much anyway, when the speech was all about rabbit tobacco anyway. And sometimes we even make wars over whose fields of dreams and rabbit tobacco are thickest. And it really doesn't matter who wins in the end, just so long as the bombs keep bursting in air and shredding the sky like so much green newsprint pretending to be rabbit tobacco. And the winners all march in a victory parade, waving flags made of rabbit tobacco and bloodlust, while the losers march drably throughout the bombed ruins, searching for broken dreams and the stems of toy bubble pipes. And meanwhile, we spend all our money building fences out of rabbit tobacco to keep the enemy rabbit tobacco away or to punish it for smoking up our skies when the final homemade pipe finally gets lit up by somebody desperately wanting to grow up. But I guess we'll pretend we're all children again as we wander the ruined streets through the shattered towns in the clouds of rabbit tobacco in this smoky excuse for a sunset. And perhaps we'll talk of the good old days when we all went to rabbit tobacco high school, or majored in rabbit tobacco at college, or went to work for rabbit tobacco industries. We worshipped rabbit tobacco at the first church of the Great Hare, whose sign was a newspaper tree painted green and stuffed in a toy corncob pipe. And some of us even got married, or just found someone or other to live with, and we all went rolling and running and fucking in the rabbit tobacco fields of our hearts, sometimes breeding more rabbits to smoke up the future, or just panting and screwing in the kennel of lust. And whether by hand or by mouth or by buttock or by breasts or even by slick genitalia, our couplings were usually just more fucking rabbit tobacco, standing in for something else, standing in sometimes for violence and hatred, and sometimes for sheer ecstasy and pure desire, but all too often pinch hitting for power as we crouched in our rabbit holes, our pink noses quivering, our cottontails shivering, our rabbit ears listening for the least sound of danger, smoking rabbit tobacco and pretending it was love. And even those few who had found the real thing, or who thought what they found was real, spent the most of their time brushing gruffly aside all the newspaper icons of the poor hopeless searchers for plastic bubble pipes amid the roughage and carnage as the gray brittle sunset found them all smoking, all naked, and all of them grown up now to await the gray dawn, which would soon split the sky with the sound of 1,000,000 green newspaper willows pretending to weep. In the South, they grow rabbit tobacco, and they smoke it whenever they have to. And they dream of the old days gone by when someone else smoked their rabbit tobacco for them. And they all look away, as the brittle clouds of worthless gray smoke rise aloft to obscure the forests and jungles where newspaper trees have to stand in for shreds of lost empires. And meanwhile, the rest of us march to the sea, our carpet bags filled with spare corn cobs, our plastic bubble pipes clenched between our stern jaws, our weapons alert for anyone dressed like a newspaper soldier painted gray or whistling Dixie. And we march to the sea, singing heart-thumping battle hymns, our hearts thumping wildly, as if we were a sick, dying dog, and pretending it was rapid tobacco. Thank you. I think I'm going to give you back to Jim right now. Maybe she'll be more upbeat. Yeah, well, that's just great, Gobby, but don't you have anything nice to say about rabbits? Well, actually, Jim, I believe it is you who might have something nice to say about rabbits. So you go ahead and you say it. Well, okay. I know you guys have heard about the Pukarama comic, and this was all based on something that happened back in 1998. It's a true story, but you're going to have to read the comic book to find out more about it. What I can tell you is that there was this omnipresent character named Pookie who saved the world from a real apocalypse. Now, I don't know if that happened back in 1998 or if it's talking about something that happens later or what. But we're doing this shamanism stuff for 2012, and we figured, or I figured, you know, there were reasons why Jim and Gobby didn't want to be involved in this, but I got to hold sway. And I figured Pookie was the best thing we had. The name Pookie came from the way the thing seemed. This character showed up and was almost indescribable during the shamanic event where it showed up. But it reminded Jim of the Puka character in movies like Harvey, and more recently, there was one in the movie Donnie Darko, which was actually about saving the world. So, in Harvey, the Puka was like a big invisible rabbit that only the drunken protagonist could see. But we decided to go ahead, or Jim did, I wasn't around at the time, but Jim decided to consider it as a Puka of some sort and started calling it Pookie, because it deserved a name, what with, you know, saving the world and everything. And that's the Pookie symbol that I'm waving around in my little creation myth thing there, you know? So that's also the Pookie symbol that is on my arm in the other picture. And this stuff all gets explained in the trilogy, probably a lot more so than you would want. But meanwhile, as if that weren't enough, we were going to do this little performance thing on the internet called The Pookie Show. And we haven't gotten around to it yet. It's not as necessary now, but still, I came up with a theme song for The Pookie Show. And since Pookie was an omnipresent character, spread throughout time and space, that would mean everything is sort of like part of the Pookie Show, including this. So I guess the theme song works for here too, and I'm going to do it for you tonight. It goes like this. Pookie, it's the Pookie Show. Everybody's gonna have a good time. Whoop, whoop. Now, Why don't you all join in? I'm sure Pookie's listening. Everybody, Pookie, it's the Pookie Show. Everybody's gonna have a good time. Whoop, whoop. All right, yes. Thank you. I'm sure Pookie thanks you as well. Goblinhood said we don't write much poetry, and originally that was all I had written, was the Pookie Show theme song. But yeah, actually on October the 12th of this past year, I woke up and I had a comic book panel from an old EC comic book in my mind, in our mind, and it inspired my very first poem. So I actually wrote something for this thing tonight. And if you see the Pookarama comic, there's a picture taken from that comic book panel. You'll probably see where I got the poem from. The poem is entitled Echo. Sometimes I hear this sound again that would look like a shadow if the eyes could speak. And sometimes I feel the writing on the wall, having such a good time when the fun's all over. But it must have been a blast while the titan wind lasted, with no time for sounds, where the ears slowly weep. When it's over, someone tells us that it's over, maybe the rainbow, and the man behind the curtain turns his evil eye elsewhere, except for the encore and the sound of a second coming. And the fire, when it comes again, lights all the sleeping dogs awake. Listen, you can hear them barking, or is that down the street? But it means, yeah, we're awake now, and this is where we live. And it's where we all live too, when we're not living somewhere else. Sometimes I read the future in ashes, and I think of the snows of years gone by, and how wistful the glories to come when our ashes are blown away. It's easy for me, you'll say. I never was here. I'm not here now, and it's not my extinction to face. How nice for me, but the sun always rises on everybody's pain, and your pain is barely real to some. And whose throat fills with blood as I try to speak the words that might banish the pain. It's true, I'm a mere rumor of an afterthought at that, but you think you see a plan that put you here, when there isn't even a here, especially when we're living somewhere else. At least I know where I came from, and we all know where I'm going, and at least getting there was most of the fun when the fun's all over. Now my mountain is fading, my vast narcissus that made me this. This flag I wave for a country that is bidding its borders farewell. Which way is the sweet by and by? We remember those blossoms that bruised the August sky, but their past was our prologue. My Big Bang was the last day of summer, and I never touched the sky. Do you know when your God was born? Mine left an impression on the bed where he'd been sleeping, and gave it my name. Summer wasn't quite over, and my name kept changing, like the seasons. I remember he wept at how short my life might be, and how, through his tears, I saw his true face. Those lost cities where nobody touches the sky are places where I could have spent my whole life while I was busy never being born. But his heart opened to me, and I woke there saying, yeah, I'm awake now, and this is where I live, or is that down the street? They say sleeping dogs lie, but all dreams are in a language of deception. Mine aren't forever either. Those lives etched on walls by some terrible light reflect only the past. Those fires may come again, but the future I see is less warming for us all. The snows of years gone by feel like the spaces between the stars. It's where we're all going when we're not going somewhere else. But maybe spring will come again, written in a language of deception. If it does, I'll gather those bright flowers that only sound like the ones before. I'll feel their beauty and taste how fragile their tiny lives keep being. Listen, you can smell them burning to touch the sky. Here's one that only grows where someone or something never was. We call it echo. Thank you. I'm going to let Goblinhood introduce his last piece. Why, thank you, Chimera. That will be fine. This last piece is long and hard and obsolete. That's the best part of it. It's a Cold War poem from the elder days. You will recognize certain Cold War tropes and vanished artifacts, such as our antique space shuttle. Does anybody remember that? No. No? Okay. And see, what makes it nice is that this is all in the past. It's obsolete. This end of the world never happened. So you folks get to just sit back and enjoy the apocalypse that it's talking about. It's going to be kind of in the form of a duet. And Chimera is going so. Without further ado, the poem is entitled Glass Organs. Take it away, Chip. When Babylon met the friendly glade, a union strange and dire was made, a fair exchange and even trade. All bets were off, all debts were paid. A new world born, old hopes waylaid, their tattered fabric torn and frayed. A flag that must the soul degrade. But I've sworn not to be afraid. And fear is so small next to panic, and panic the price of technology. And so history becomes hysteria as we leave the gentle summerland for the city of sin, our lives plugged in to one vast computerized deity, our master's machinery, the master race. The human race was not a hard act to follow. In the gleaming crystal silence of the halls of death, we quail. In riot desperation, our glass organs quaking, our crystal hearts breaking, our old world unmasked. making an alien terrain now, emblazoned with our own frozen footprints in the sand. And so here we are, well into the written word, and it's too late to turn back now. And some of us are trying not to be afraid. This noble effort, whilst printed lies are published daily, and the secret formula which will kill us all is being written at this very moment on a chalkboard somewhere. The trees are all gone now, so we're back to writing on slate. That's progress, I guess. But don't bother me now. I'm busy trying not to be afraid. But he was afraid of his own shadow, for he had cast a giant shadow on the world. Whilst morning's glory and heavenly blues made me vomit pure poetry into the broiling chaos dawn, mushrooming thorny fire like a cactus from hell, I watched the mob dancing at a mask of death to the tune of the belladonna blues. The glass houses had spewed forth this glass menagerie into the glazed crystal streets for the final glass orgy, a shattering tarantella as flesh claimed fragile flesh in the dawning nightmare glare. And hopeless millions I saw there. Their opium-fed brains leaked and ran from their ears like rats deserting Kubra's pleasure dome. Their chromosomes were all damaged and they all thought they could fly. But their acid visions burned forever. Their glass organs, like throbbing test tubes, were bottomless receptacles for desperation incarnate, with golden spikes in their punctured arms and swollen daggers in their sunken eyes. They glued their heads into brown paper shopping bags. Some of them could only breathe the fumes of grass and hash or crack. And some had had their nostrils surgically replaced with rolled up century notes. Some were sobered down and could see only reds, man, whilst others had arranged a speed lift to get them through the long night as we watched and waited for that grisly dawn and raved and prayed against the dying of the light. The citizens of this hallucination had survived the splitting of the atom, but succumbed to the detonation of the mind. The scorpions are all smiling now, but their turn will come as the world turns on them when the sun gets around to toasting their chitinous little hides with bloody autumn wine. And so I told my shrink, look, I know the sirens aren't real. If they were, I'd be hearing them for the rest of my life. But they've sounded real since the day I turned 30. And they also sound dangerous. Can't you make them stop anyway? The Apocalypse Times was publishing a special edition for every moment that still remained in order to disseminate the following vital information. Warning, warning, danger, danger. All citizens are instructed to please stand by for further instructions and vital information. I personally wouldn't mind dying that way,
But the death of the world really appalls me for some reason whenever I'm sane enough not to want to take it all with me. I'm amazed you don't hear them yourselves yet.
And Conrad tells us that jolly old St. Nuke is coming to make it rain, fire, and brimstone from his magic sleigh up there.
Even civilians, pure of heart, who live in shells day and night, can get shell-shocked when the moon is cruel and the autumn wine runs bright.
The nuclear drill. 1. Hide under the bed in an orderly fashion. 2. Have an orderly heart attack and kiss ground zero goodbye.
And somewhere in the future, they are probably real.
We were knee-high in Agent Orange, but it might have been a Soviet agent. When the air is filled with trees and all, you can't tell who's on whose side all the time, or if there even is more than one side at any one time.
And Scuttlebutt says it wears holes in your side, but that's really beside the point. The supermarkets had long since joined the buffalo in near extinction, and you can't bite on a steady diet of Lysol and fingernails, not even somebody else's, nor live on glass organs and silicone livers. The Animal Protective Society was out to breakfast that year, and life was busy making snuff flicks for the kiddie porn crowd. The bruised sky was aflame with jellied napalm hell and the neutron bomb's blight. And rumor had it that the secret formula which will kill us all was being developed at that very moment in a military think tank's plague lab somewhere by a highly paid public servant and government employee. And we all wondered how many things would turn out to be mutants in the end. For many, it was a time of punctuation. Few could withstand the rigors of the emergency outcast system. For some, it was not a test.
The 1,000 injuries of my enemies I had borne as well as a character by Poe. Yet still I wondered if I should tell Shrinko about the dream in which I actually bit somebody's face off. And will we be left standing, you and I, standing here? Or will we find our sense must disappear, our atoms gone to fragments nuclear, our souls gone on to everlasting cheer? Or will we have to live where life is dear, adapting to a fate most sinister, a world gone mad and strange and grim and queer, where evolution rapes you with a leer, where all that's left is frenzy, force, and fear, survival king, and death its only peer, where cannibals roam with fear, all poison now the air once sweet and clear, where hope laments and fortune sheds a tear. Oh, will we, must we be left standing here? And standing here, we feed on the dread portents, nourished by terror and besotted with bile. We must breakfast on runes as the world burns. The food is all toxified now, but the words, all those martial mouthings for the marching morons, are still etched in fire across the sky. Here today, gone today. Fly now, slay later. Our motto, never give a sucker an even break. Let madness reign and Caligula be king. He styles himself a thespian and will act the tyrant well. We'll take Mexico away from Cortez and build 3 hotels on Paradise Place. We'll collect our money without passing go, and some of us will spend the rest of our lives in jail. Be thrilled, children, the best is yet to come, for the second coming is always the best. When you worship something that old farmer Yawa nailed onto his barn door. We'll save up our sins and collect a new toaster by next Easter. And if that doesn't work, we'll hurl fiery gadgets at Russia so that our space shuttle can make movies of all the tragedy and devastation. And perhaps those films will be shown at drive-ins in Alpha Centauri someday. But the popcorn wars will be long done, and I will be well done if it was well done, or else cringing around and worrying about the fascism again, and wondering how to keep my Orwellian ashes out of trouble in some brave new police state. Either way, I wouldn't want to star in one of those dramas, but I guess we will all be stars by then. When the trees are all gone and the slates are cleaned out, we'll have to write on celluloid so that the aliens can see how brave we all were because of all the big bad guts we had, and how much like Achilles we were, and how we were a cast of thousands of millions. And thousands of millions of years hence, they'll read this, painfully inscribed with a pen, frame by frame, on celluloid, and they will marvel that he was not afraid to write. He heard the sirens for the rest of his life, but he pretended they weren't there. His claws were made of brass, but his organs were blown glass, love-crafted by those skilled artisans in that city of strange bedfellows, and it's never really shatterproof when you need one. But lo, he persevered anyway, endlessly, amid the crying in the night. This noble upstart who would be clean, this outland desperado with the lightning draw, this poor Pied Piper of the Bethlehem slouch, did sing his sad songs of sorrow and sin, regardless of the consequences to him, for lo, he was not afraid. He sang and sang of passion and pain to an audience of none in a theater of the mind, accompanied only by the transparent cathedral chords of his brittle and brilliantly coruscating glass organs as they shattered orgasmically, one by one, in a kind of gory hymn to the entropic process. And death could not kill the glory of his song. His only worry was having to come back and live in a reincarnation. But the song as he hacked and hewed and flayed, only echoed the carnage and ruin that he made, and the music roared and peaked as he played and sang and laughed and was not afraid.
Thank you very much. I like to end these little things by saying,
That's it for Goblinhood and his little dolls, too.
but I'm sure Chim would like to say goodnight on her own.
Thanks, Gobby. And good night, everybody. I hope you had a good time. Happy 2012. And may Pookie be with you.
Thank you everybody for coming. There is an after party event at the Blue Dube. It was hard to get you guys in, but we got room for you. So come on over to the Dube afterwards. Thanks. Make sure you try some mead, try some tea, and we'll see you again soon.